This is a story about $250,000. Fine leveled against me, a small-town farmer, by a woman who thought my cows smelled too much like, well, cows. The kicker? I wasn't even a member of her homeowners association. Never have been, never would be. You know, the old Oakstead has been in my family for 3 generations. We're in Whisperwood Valley, Idaho, and it's not some industrialized mega farm. It's a small local operation. We've got maybe 20 acres. A handful of dairy cows, a flock of chickens, and we sell the eggs and fresh milk at the Saturday farmers market. It's a grind, sure, but it's an honest, quiet life. My grandpa started it in the 1930s. The community grew around us. Back in the 90s, when they carved out the Meadowbrook Estates development, the original HOA board was easygoing. They knew we predated them, understood we were grandfathered out of their bylaws. It was peace for years. Then came Cassidy Thorne. She moved in 2 years ago, straight from some high-powered corporate job in Seattle, and within 6 months, she'd leveraged her sharp elbows and loud voice right into the HOA presidency. She didn't transition, she invaded, and the old Oakstead, my quiet sanctuary, immediately became her primary target. I was fixing a fence line one Saturday morning, the kind of work where your mind can just wander, when this sleek, silver SUV pulls up and a woman steps out, wearing tailored linen and sunglasses indoors confidence. That was Cassidy, Owen, she clipped, the voice instantly grating. I'm Cassidy Thorne, the new HOA president. I've been reviewing the plat maps, and frankly, your property is a mess of violations. I leaned on the fence post, trying to keep it simple. Oh, hey, Cassidy. I think you're mistaken. The farm isn't actually part of the Meadowbrook HOA. We're grandfathered out. The look she gave me. It was like I'd just handed her a bowl of dirt for dinner. That smile evaporated, replaced by this tight, angry squint. You don't get to opt out, Owen. You're within the development lines. This isn't optional, and I'm frankly amazed you've gotten away with this for so long. I'm sending you a formal list. You have 30 days to fix every single deficiency before we start levying fines. She didn't wait for a reply, just spun on her heel and drove off. I stood there utterly confused. It was the first time I felt that deep, visceral clash between my quiet working world and her world of manufactured rules and petty power. The list arrived a week later. And when I say list, I mean a manifesto. It wasn't minor. It was everything that makes a farm a farm. She cited the unacceptable odor levels emanating from my livestock. She wanted me to change how a dairy cow smells. Can you believe that? She flagged the excessive and disruptive noise after 10 p.m., meaning she expected me to somehow muzzle a chicken at sunrise or tell a calf to hold its tongue. She even called my perfectly functional 1970s workhorse tractor a visual blight, because it had some surface rust. My barn was dilapidated. My whole livelihood was an eyesore to her. A sensible person would have ignored it, right? But the sheer aggressive audacity, it rattled me. I told my wife Eliza, she's just trying to flex. She'll get bored. But Cassidy Thorne wasn't interested in flexing. She was interested in conquest. 30 days passed and I ignored the list, because, again, not their jurisdiction. Then the next letter arrived. It wasn't a warning. It was a bill. I remember standing in the kitchen, the morning sun hitting the paper, showing a single stark number at the bottom. $250,000, Eliza gasped. My oldest son, home from college, just stared. Cassidy had retroactively charged me for every single violation, dating back to her start date, adding punitive fees, and slapping on a failure to comply charge for every single month. Late fees for fines I'd never been lawfully subject to. The sheer criminal absurdity of it made my blood run cold. I immediately called my old college buddy, a lawyer named Liam, and he listened patiently. She can't legally do this, Owen, he said, but she can sure try. A nuisance suit, a title dispute, they have the HOA money. They can bleed you dry in legal fees before a judge ever sees the facts. That's when the truth hit me. A cold, hard punch to the gut. This wasn't about the smell of my cows or the rust on my tractor. It was about the land. My 20 acres were right next to the HOA's most desirable undeveloped section. If they could force me out, they could buy my property, carve it into 6 high-end lots, and boom, instant dues and instant profit for them. The $250,000 fine wasn't punishment. It was a hostile takeover. I went down to the HOA office one last time, armed with my original deed showing the 1930s demarcation. I confronted Cassidy. This stops now, Cassidy. My farm predates your HOA by 60 years. You have no legal standing and this bill is fraud. I laid the deed down. She barely glanced at it, crossing her arms, a triumphant smirk playing on her lips. I've already spoken with our legal team, Owen. We are well within our rights to enforce community standards, especially since your property impacts our property values. You can pay the fine or we will commence litigation. I know what that land is worth. I suggest you cooperate. That settled it. She wasn't just entitled. She was predatory. She thought she could threaten my family, my livelihood, and the legacy of the old Oakstead, with nothing but corporate ruthlessness and a bank account. I walked out of that office and felt a shift. No more defense. It was time for a siege. The next few weeks I was consumed. Liam's warning, that she could drag me through court even if she was wrong, was the engine. I wasn't just fighting for my farm. I was fighting a bully who used institutional power as a weapon. And I realized, the biggest weakness of a bully who relies on rules is that they almost never follow their own. I became the HOA's quiet historian. I printed their entire 200-page covenant. I started keeping the Thorn file. I bought a cheap zoom lens for my camera and started driving around the Meadowbrook estates late at night and early in the morning. I didn't have to look hard. Cassidy Thorn herself had just put in a massive, unpermitted swimming pool, a clear violation of the Aesthetics and Community Structure Clause. A board member, a man named Marcus, routinely stored a hideous RV right in his driveway, which was a Level 3 violation. Another board member hosted loud, raucous parties every Friday night, which would certainly violate Cassidy's precious noise after 10 p.m. rule, the very same rule she used to fine my cows. The hypocrisy was astonishing. My neighbor Jace, God bless him, saw me one day taking pictures of Marcus's RV. I brought him into the loop and he immediately had my back. Jace was our eyes and ears inside the HOA membership. He confirmed that Cassidy had cultivated a circle of privileged friends, the in crowd, who were immune to her rules, while she was actively targeting anyone who challenged her authority, or anyone whose property she secretly coveted. Then came the digital resistance. I didn't want to use my personal name, so I created an anonymous community page called the Whisperwood Watch. I kept it private and only invited residents who had expressed discontent or were known to be outside Cassidy's inner circle. The first post was simple. Has anyone received unfair or ridiculous fines from the new HOA board? Share your story. The floodgates opened. It was devastating. People had been fined for the wrong shade of white paint, for having Christmas lights up 2 days too long, for low-level property nuisances that the board's friends committed every day. My big reveal, the $250,000 threat over my farm, hit them like a bomb. Seeing the truth, seeing the pattern of abuse united the whole community. I put out the call. Next HOA meeting. Bring your fines. We demand transparency and accountability. The night of the meeting was tense. The community center was packed, and Cassidy looked utterly smug, flanked by her 2 loyal board members. She started with the usual self-congratulatory drivel about restoring order, but as soon as she opened the floor to community comments, the siege began. A woman named Carol, fined $500 for a broken mailbox she couldn't afford to fix, stood up. Then an older gentleman, fined for a garden gnome that violated the uniform aesthetic. The stories piled up. But then I stood. I walked to the front, feeling the weight of the last 3 months, the stress, the sleepless nights, the fear of losing the old Oakstead. I looked straight at Cassidy Thorn. Cassidy, I said, my voice quiet but carrying, you sent me a bill for $250,000 for the crime of owning a farm that has been here since 1938. You accused my house of falling apart, my tractor of being an eyesore, and my animals of smelling bad. Yet you, the president, have a massive unpermitted pool in your backyard, and your trusted board members are routinely violating the rules you claim to uphold. I didn't stop. This isn't an HOA. This is a rigged club designed to extort money, seize land, and punish anyone you deem less than. And it ends tonight. The moment I projected my evidence onto the screen. Photos of Cassidy's pool. Marcus's RV, the dates of the parties. The room erupted. Cassidy Thorne's face went white. She tried to shout us down, but her voice was lost in the unified roar of the community she had betrayed. She looked around, desperate, realizing her power was gone the moment her rules no longer mattered more than simple justice. She and the entire board were forced to resign, right there, that night. The humiliation was total, and frankly, deeply satisfying. A week later, I got a letter from the newly elected temporary board. It was entirely different, humble, regretful, and direct. They formally apologized for the unauthorized and abusive actions of the previous board, officially nullified the entire $250,000 fine, and most importantly, attached the legally binding document reconfirming the old Oakstead status. Not part of the HOA. Legally exempt from all covenants, I won't lie. Seeing that black and white confirmation, knowing my farm was safe, was a profound relief. Cassidy Thorne packed up and moved out of Whisperwood Valley 2 months later. I never saw her again. It taught me that when institutional power goes rogue, your only defense isn't a better lawyer. It's a unified community armed with documentation. I'm still a farmer, still selling milk and eggs, but now I'm also the guy who showed a corporate bully that a few cows and a righteous community can take down an empire of petty rules. But here's the thing I want to know from all of you. Was I wrong to fight fire with fire? Should I have just ignored her? Or was mobilizing the community the only way to ensure true justice? Let me know in the comments below, smash that like button, and share your own HOA horror stories. I read every single one.